Hello again. If you met me before during the parent conference that we had, if not, I'm Robin Hamilton, the new principal, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the forthcoming academic year and some of the important changes that will take place, and also answer some questions that you've presented. So it's a new year, new academic year, and it's a new start. And first of all, let's talk about some of the questions that you raised. Now, these cover a number of topics related to staffing and assessment. And also, we're looking at the effect of COVID, of course, and homeschool communication, and the development of English language skills amongst the students, development of the 4 skills, and also the extracurricular, the enrichment activities as well. So we'll have a look at all of these. Let's talk about staffing first of all. Now we have actually started, Ms. Hong and I, interviewing new teachers, and all positions will be filled by the end of June. And we're looking for 4 criteria, and those are a degree in a relevant subject, a teaching qualification, experience working in the region, Southeast Asia, and experience of the Cambridge curriculum. Now, some of you have asked about publication of CVs. We can't do that because they are confidential, but there will be a summary of the teacher's professional experience posted on the website. Now, the other question you've asked in relation to the recruitment of teachers is whether they are native speakers or not. And for English and global perspectives, yes, of course, there must be. But they don't need to be for maths and science. And why is this? It's because of the emergence of Globish or global English, which is the range of English accents which we now meet in the world, which students really need to become familiar with. So it's perfectly acceptable to have non-native speakers teaching math, science, and ICT. Now, another question you've raised is about teachers' commitment, because of course teachers come and go, and it is one of the main sources of complaint around the world from parents and students about the turnover of the teaching staff. Now, we need to look at why teachers go or why they stay. They tend to stay longer if they're happier in the country, if they have friends, if they're treated well, if they're given appreciation, and if they work with a professional principal, that can help as well. And very importantly, that they have opportunities for staff development, professional progress. Now, in terms of working for a professional school, we're drafting the new contract and job description and the teacher handbook as well. That should increase teachers' perception of the school as a professional organisation. But the most important thing for me as a principal is to recruit for attitude, to recruit for the right heart and the right mind, and then train for skills. So although some of you are very, very interested in the teachers' credentials, actually the most important thing is their attitude. And I have a history of recruiting teachers with a good attitude. Now, do you remember also, though, that teachers do move on as part of their career progression, and Vietnam and Hanoi are competing with other attractive locations around Southeast Asia and indeed the world. Now, let's talk about the quality of the teacher performance. 3 main ways to assess that. And these are obviously the lesson observation. Also the student survey, which tells us the student's experience across the year. And the actual student's performance in externally set tests. Now this means Cambridge tests really, not tests that are set within the school by the teachers, but that are standardized, moderated externally, which of course is a much better indication of the student's achievement. Now, there will be, of course, training delivered by myself, especially remediation where it's needed based on lesson observation and the student survey. And here's a long list of some of the staff development activity that I've delivered across Southeast Asia over the last few years. I won't read them all, but if you want to, you can pause the tape and have a look at those in detail. And there's an image of me delivering staff training. Now let's move on to student assessment, and the very starting point, very important starting point, sorry, is the student placement. Now, this is in front of you. This is the Common European Framework of Reference, and it's a scale of language learning, not just English, but any language. So you could apply this to Vietnamese or Chinese, for example, and it charts progress from A1, which is beginner or basic, right through to C2, which is mastery. And Cambridge have cleverly matched these standards to their own exams. And it's these exams which we want students to take and excel in. So if you look there, you can see at the bottom, there's the Cambridge Young Learners exam, starters, movers and flyers. Then there's CET, or Key English Test, and then preliminary. We wouldn't expect any of our students to be taking preliminary next year, but we will be using these tests as the monthly assessment of the end of year and end of semester report card. And also, we can use these tests to place students in what we believe is the right class for them. If we look at it in Vietnamese, you can see what we think are probably the right levels. And it means that the students could take the real Cambridge exams, usually after every 2 years. So in grade 2, you might expect them to take starters, and movers they would take in grade 4, and flyers in grade 6, and so on. Now, these tests, as I say, would form part of the placement test, in which we would hope to put students into the right class for them. It's very, very important that students are in the right class, matched to their ability. If the lesson in the language used is too easy, then students get bored, and if it's too difficult, they get left behind. And of course, it affects their learning of every other subject as well. Students can stay in their friendship groups if they want to, but if they are shown to be performing better than average, they could be moved up, or they could drop down if they feel comfortable with it. It's not mandatory, it's not something that has to happen, but it is a possibility if it helps the student. We know that student friendship groups are very important, so we will keep those if that's what the student prefers. Now, as I've said, students can take the real Cambridge exams, and these measure their separate competencies in speaking, listening, reading, and writing, and the certificates reflect that. And they're not expensive, between $50 and $100. So that's an option if you want it. You want your student to have a real Cambridge certificate, they can, and they look like these. They last a lifetime, and they show how well your child is performing internationally. As I've said already, these tests can be used internally. So we will not be asking teachers to set their own tests, but ones which tell us how well the students can really perform against international standards. And it is diagnostic and tells us the remedial action that we need to take. Now, maths and science are different. There is a checkpoint, which can be used for grade 5 and grade 6. But for the lower year levels, we're better off looking at Singapore maths and science. As you know, Singapore is a world leader in the teaching and assessment of maths and science. And I'm a Singapore resident. I will be drawing upon Singapore assessments adapted to the level of the students here. And global perspectives and ICT can be assessed internally. So we've talked already about standardization in the previous slides, and the fact that we can use these assessments as one of our indicators of quality assurance, which will tell us about the teacher performance as well as the students, of course, as well. No, the effect of COVID. My feeling is that COVID will have passed as the year progresses, but if it's still with us, what will happen? Well, the evidence from around the world is that switching to, the video conference call, Zoom or Skype or other means like Google Meet, and then delivering the lesson in the same old way just hasn't worked. It's not been as effective as classroom teaching, and that's the evidence around the world. So the question is why, and what can be done about it? Now, a number of reasons why children don't behave the same way in a video call that they do in a classroom, but the better method, in my view, is to adapt the traditional online learning method that has been used by universities for a long time, and that is this. 3 stages. First of all, the pre-recorded lesson, which the student can watch as many times as they like, and it doesn't have to be one recorded by the teacher. It can be one borrowed from the BBC or other reputable educational source. Then there is the timed assessment, stage 2, and then the student photographs or scans their work and submits it, sends it in to schedule, to a deadline. And then the video conference method is used to give the feedback and for discussions and question and answer. So you might see something like this, where the homework, if you like, is posted for the students to access. And as I say, it might be professionally produced material, I hope it is. The student can watch it as many times as they want. Then they take stage 2, which is the assessment. And then finally, there's the conference call with everybody to give general feedback and answer questions. This would be the right method to use if we're still suffering from COVID. And this is called flipped learning or flipped assessment. And you can find lots of information about it on the internet. So let's move on to homeschool communication now. This is very, very important. People don't like change, but if there has to be change, it must be communicated very, very clearly. So there will be a homework schedule, and there will be a post itemizing this on the designated Facebook group, accessible by students, parents and teachers and myself, of course. There's no need for daily lesson plans because the homework will imply what needs to be done. But of course, the next lesson is also indicated in the next few pages of the textbook or workbook or activity book, which parents have access to anyway. And either the student's exercise book or the communication book can be used for homeschool communication as well. We don't want too many bits of paper and too many books, so we try and keep it short and simple. Now, as before, there will be letters out bilingually written, and they will be and we're going to give you the details of this below this video. Let's get back to the learning of English. I'm going to talk about some ways that children can improve their 4 skills: reading, writing, speaking, listening. And these are ways that you can help your home. Now, first of all, remember that the Cambridge Global English Series is very well prepared, and it has, for example, a lot of CD audio recordings which expose children to all Cambridge tests, include a 15-minute speaking test, and so that will be included in the students' ongoing assessment. By the way, the English tests that we're using, starters, movers, flyers, ket and pet, are all the same structure and format as IELTS, the International English Language Testing System, the world's #1 English language entrance qualification for university and immigration to Western English, Anglo-Saxon speaking countries. And so it's very, very good preparation for that as well. Now, we have to remember that reading fiction particularly, very useful for development of English skills, and it has to form an important part of the curriculum. It helps children with the pronunciation, the grammar, idiom, which is the language we use in everyday use, excuse me, and also the inferential thinking skills, which develop the child's cognitive and thinking ability. And we'll be looking at readers and adaptive, simplified readers for students, and a properly assessed reading program. Now, I recommend, because English has got the world's largest lexicon, 500,000 words, that students keep a personal dictionary in which they write down every new word and its meaning, and they put it into a sample sentence. And I've seen evidence of how well this can help students to develop, because vocabulary is so important. Watching films or listening to songs with subtitles is a pretty effective way, especially of learning how English is used in everyday life. Students can gain confidence by making presentations, especially in assembly, and also taking part in games and competitions like, for example, a debate contest or spelling bee competition or other forms of edutainment. Make the learning of English fun, interesting, yes, and engaging. Now, the evidence says that the teacher has to mark the work carefully, thoroughly, and make helpful comments, because this is one of the things that teachers do that really, really does help students. Let's move on now to what students do when they're not pursuing their academic studies, the whole person development. Now, assembly can be used obviously for the principal's talk that addresses what's happening, but also we can use it for students to give their own presentations, to gain confidence this way, for there to be special announcements, for the invitation of special presenters and speakers, which broadens students' general knowledge about the world they're living in, to reward achievement through prizes and awards, and also the kind of entertainment or edutainment activities I've talked about already, like the games and competitions. There's me presenting an award. Now, excuse me, my throat. I haven't got COVID. The calendar events, a great time for students to show off their artistic and performance art abilities. Sports Day and Cultural Day, other events, of course, throughout the year will be featured strongly. You can see there the Halloween celebration. And this is connected to the extracurricular activity, because we're hoping to designate 2 periods on a Friday afternoon for students to opt for an activity of their choice, depending on what skills and abilities the teaching staff can offer. And these activities can lead into the festive events we've talked about. So if, for example, you're in the dance group, you could be performing or preparing a performance for Christmas, Halloween, Lunar New Year, Valentine's Day, all that sort of thing. But there are other activities too, interesting activities. We'd like to have a media club, which can help us to produce a yearbook and a YouTube channel. And of course, the sports and games, indoor and outdoor. And as I say, these are connected in some ways to the calendar events, the festive events. Now, I'm British, so I favour the house system. The house system divides students into different coloured houses, red, green, blue and yellow. And we use this to encourage competition. And it's a great motivator for students, actually. And also the appointment of student leaders, head boy, head girl, and prefects. So all of this can come under the theme of leadership, developing leadership ability. Personal social health education is the British version of soft skills. And again, it gives students an opportunity for public speaking, for understanding more about the world that they live in. So those are basically the developments which you should see over the year, and more if it seems feasible and it's workable. And you know, we can progress even more quickly. Now, I hope that that answers some of the questions that you've raised, but we'll find another means for you to ask me directly anything else. But otherwise, for now, I hope that's reassuring and that you can look forward to the best year so far back home, and hope to meet you all soon and enjoy continuing this conversation. So for now, thank you very much for listening.